it's always going to be sort of limited, if you will, by our own puny human intelligence.
Is the use of the word puny inside of the textbooks?
Puny.
Is there a footnote?
No. Right.
See
Right,
number
right.
2
Yeah,
and
right.
text.
Yeah, exactly. Look up small
Piglet.
limited piglet. Welcome to another episode of the Table of Content. Pull up a chair. I'm joined by my sterling and brilliant co-host, Albert. And today, Albert, how are you doing today?
Very good. Very good. Thank you. How are you, Michael?
I'm doing well. Yes, I'm trying not to stumble over my words, but other than that, I'm doing okay. Right. And today we have the opportunity to talk about one of my favorite philosophers and a story surrounding him. And it was written by James Baldwin. And so anyways, let's get into it.
So Socrates,
Yes,
he's one of your favorite
Socrates,
philosophers?
yes, of course, right. I always assume that people can read my mind, right? But yes, Socrates.
So the story is Socrates and His House. And as
Yes.
always, if you haven't listened to the story, go to our YouTube, go to Facebook, go to our website, podcast, but listen to the story, Socrates and His House, and then you can come back and listen to me and Michael talk about Socrates and His House. But I'm curious, so really is Socrates one of your favorite philosophers?
He is, right? As someone who dabbles in philosophy, and I teach part-time philosophy at the local Benedictine college, right? I tell my students, if you had only 3 philosophers to choose from, choose Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle. That's a really solid foundation on which to build a philosophical outlook and a philosophical framework.
I thought you were gonna like the third was gonna be like some random musician, from the 70s or 80s, like James Taylor.
Yeah, there you go. Right. Also a philosopher in his own right, I suppose, right? But no, Socrates is amazing, right? He is the first, and well, he's maybe not the first, but he's the greatest of ancient philosophers, right? His whole life and his whole pursuit of wisdom and his whole integrity with respect to pursuing wisdom are really inspiring, right? Socrates himself was not a handsome man, was not a wealthy man. He was a war hero. He was a hoplite in the Greek army, and he was known for having saved a group of his fellow soldiers in a skirmish, and he was revered for having acted bravely and heroically in preserving their lives. And then after the wars, I think it was the Peloponnesian Wars, received this sort of mission to help people on the path to wisdom, and spent the rest of his life helping people pursue wisdom.
What a shift in life, right? You're a soldier, you're a war hero,
Yeah.
And then they say, well done. Now help people with their path to wisdom.
Right.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting how it sort of came about. He, a friend of his, visited the Oracle of Delphi, or Delphi, depending on how you pronounce it, but basically was told, asked the question, who is the wisest person around? And was told that Socrates was the wisest person around. So his friend goes back to him and says, the Oracle of Delphi says that you're the wisest person around. And Socrates has this immediate experience of like, oh, wait a minute, I'm full of ignorance. And I know that there's a lot of things that I don't know. And then he makes it his mission then to go and actually show the Oracle of Delphi that there was in fact someone who knew more than he did and was in fact the wisest person in around at that time and not Socrates. And so his whole approach, the Socratic method, has been developed throughout the years. But the idea is Socrates thought that in order for us to grow in wisdom, we had to first come to grips with our own ignorance, right? And once we come to grips and once we have that I don't know moment, then true wisdom can happen. Or as he would say, wonder is the first step towards wisdom, or wonder leads to wisdom, right? So anyways, Socrates.
So my last question about Socrates, and we'll get into the little story here. Is it Socrates that Thomas Aquinas refers to as the great philosopher, or is that who is Aquinas referring to when he talks about the philosopher?
So St. Thomas Aquinas is talking about Aristotle when he refers to the philosopher, right? And so Socrates never wrote anything down. Socrates' greatest student was Plato. Plato wrote the Platonic dialogues, in which Socrates is a main protagonist, is the main protagonist of the conversations. Plato founds his academy, and Plato's greatest student was Aristotle. And Aristotle then goes on to found his own academy, or they were called the Peripatetics, right? The walkers around. But St. Thomas Aquinas refers to Aristotle as the philosopher, as a sign of respect and term of endearment.
So it sounds like your top three recommendations is sort of like the trifecta of philosophers, right? Because it's just one step down from each one: Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle.
Right. And each builds on each other. Each has their slightly different ideas about reality, about the way we think, about what it means to be human. And of course, these are all ancient pagans as well. So they didn't really have the light of revelation and grace. And well, grace, I'm sure, was at work. I would even venture to say, especially in some of the things Plato and also Aristotle, their insights into the nature of what it means to be human. There's definitely, I feel, a type of grace at work.
Sure.
Yeah. Exciting.
Well, so James Baldwin, now we can see sort of how James Baldwin interpreted Socrates, and it's a really short story, and I don't think it's quite as heady as you might read in, the Republic or Nicomachean Ethics, right? Is that how you say it?
Right. Yeah. Nicomachean Ethics was Aristotle. The Republic was Plato. Right.
So it's but there's still something deep here, I think, that we'll see out of James Baldwin's story. And basically we have Socrates, who is recognized as this great philosopher in the story, but he decides to live in a really small, tiny house, and he's sort of getting some negative feedback, like, why are you living in such a house? It says that they ask Socrates, what is the reason that you, who are so great a man, should build such a little box as this for your dwelling house? Indeed, Socrates says, there may be little reason, but small as the place is, I shall think myself happy if I can fill it, if I can fill even it with true friends. Right. So Socrates, from James Baldwin's perspective, looks at his house and says that there's more important things than the size of the house. Right. Socrates is saying, if I'm happy and I have good people that can be a part of my life in this small house, then that's fine with me.
Right.
Does that actually, since you are the resident philosopher, okay, and I know you say you dabble in it, but since you're the resident philosopher here, does this play into something that Socrates would have believed, like a life that is not caught up in grandeur, in expansiveness, in opulence? Is this true to who Socrates is?
Yes, it it reflects very well, I feel, on the person of Socrates. And I think that there's elements there that reflect. Um, I would, in having read a few of I haven't read all of the Platonic dialogues, but I would think that if Socrates himself were reading this story, he would probably approach their assumption that you who are so great a man should build such a little box. He would probably take them down a line of reasoning of like, well, why do you think I'm such a great man? I don't know anything. And really he was trying to, again, search for the truth and realize that in order to do that, you have to have that idea of like, I don't really know, or I don't know as fully as I should what I'm trying to research, right? So that I think there's that quote as well where he would say that what is it? The fool thinks he's a wise man, but the truly wise man knows himself to be a fool.
Mm-hmm.
And that idea of like, again, in order for us to grow, we have to recognize that we need to grow. And that means understanding that we haven't reached our full potential.
I think I've heard a similar statement in regards to the Christian life and God, that to say that you know God is less, you know God less in saying you know him versus saying I cannot understand and I cannot know fully my God because of God's greatness, right?
Yeah.
He's beyond our earthly understanding.
Yes.
So to recognize that and say, I don't understand God, and not in a negative way, like I don't
No.
know God. It's just like
Right.
I cannot understand because of his greatness.
Yes.
You basically are making a more truthful statement than saying, I know God. It's
Right.
like you're incapable.
Yeah.
Your sheer humanity cannot handle God in his fullness.
Yeah.
So the person who says, I don't know God versus the person who says, I know God is actually
Yes.
doing better. So it's along the similar statement.
Right. Right. God lives in unapproachable light, right? And as the creator of everything, or as St. Thomas Aquinas would call him, like ipsum esse subsistens, right? Subsistent being itself. His very nature is to exist. And there's an infinite separation between him as subsistent being itself and all of creation. All of creation is limited, contingent, created, right? Has a participation in existence, but that comes from God, who is subsistent being himself. And because of that, he lives an unapproachable life. Like, and in that sense, right, we can't really know God as God knows himself because we would need the mind of God, but we don't have the mind of God, right? Because we are creatures, we're creators, or we're not creators, we're creatures, right? We received existence from the creator. So we can say that we do know God, but it's always going to be sort of limited, if you will, by our own puny human intelligence.
Is the use of the word puny inside of the textbooks?
Puny.
Is there a footnote?
No. Right.
See
Right,
number
right.
2
Yeah,
and
right.
text.
Yeah, exactly. Look up small
Piglet.
limited piglet. No, but so I think that this story is beautiful, and it carries a lesson for us, right? Not to be overly impressed with the opulence of the world,
Mm-hmm.
right? The fancy cars, the yachts, the whatever, the billionaire
Right.
lifestyle, things like that, right? But to try and understand what wisdom is, it's recognizing what is of true value and true friends, right? And I think it's also a little bit of a commentary there on the nature of friendship, right? Can someone, so my wife and I, first year of marriage, went for our honeymoon, or not honeymoon, our first year wedding anniversary. We went up to Hearst Castle in California. Huge castle built by Mr. Hearst, the newspaper tycoon, right? And we heard all these stories how he would invite politicians and movie stars and artists. But how close was he really to these people, right? Were they really true friends, or were they just wanting to hobnob because it was the in crowd, right? So I think like Socrates is sort of, in this story, Socrates is commenting on the nature of true friendship, that a true friend is a treasure. And because of the effort and time involved in cultivating true friendship, you're probably not going to have a whole gaggle of them throughout your life. You're going to have 3, maybe 4. You're going to have fewer, but they're going to be high quality. I think. I mean, it's a subjective, maybe.
Sure. And, sure, some people can have 30 really good friends in their life, some
Yeah,
maybe 5. So you said some of it is subjective.
sure.
But I was thinking about what you said about wisdom in relation to what Socrates would have been doing here. It says in the beginning, young men from all parts of the land went to him to learn wisdom from him.
Mm-hmm.
And he said so many pleasant things and said them in so delightful a way that no one ever grew tired of listening to him. So, the first question is wisdom subjective or is it objective? So they went to learn wisdom from him.
Mm.
So you explained sort of the background to Socrates, that he was sort of charged to
Yeah,
go out and basically help people with wisdom, right?
right.
He realizes his own lacking,
Right.
but in the process of acknowledging that he's lacking in wisdom, he grows in wisdom, and he starts sort of doing this with the people that he encounters.
Mm.
But the concept of what exactly is considered wise,
Hmm.
right? Because young
Right.
men from all parts of the land went to him to learn wisdom.
Yeah.
But then he says, okay, I'm going to build a small house and I'm going to fill it with really good friends. So if I can fill it with good friends, then my small house decision to Socrates is wisdom, right?
Mm.
It's like I didn't effort to build a huge Greek mansion, and
Right.
I'm not efforting to try and have hundreds of friends.
Yeah.
Socrates' wisdom here is small, and if I have enough friends that can fill that house, that small house, that's good, and that's wisdom. But the people
Yeah.
question him. The people
Right.
question him.
Yes.
And we see that in our Christian faith.
Right.
All of the wisdom that God shared through his divine revelation,
Yeah.
through Old Testament and then the New Testament and the teachings of Jesus Christ, that's a guidebook for life.
Right.
But that is wisdom, I think. I think you can say is truth, is real objective truth. There's so much wisdom to gain from there. But as a society, like, I don't know about that. The
Mm-hmm.
teachings of that Jesus guy, I don't know
Right.
about, God and the 10 Commandments, it's like,
Yeah.
but aren't we searching? Are we looking to
Yes.
be wise in the best way possible?
Right.
Well, there's the Bible, but
Yes.
then, yeah, that's not really what I'm looking for. It's like, oh, Socrates, you're the smartest, the most wise. Small house and a few friends? That doesn't, I don't know, Socrates.
Right. Yeah. It's a commentary on if wisdom is understanding the true value of things, and then his final statement, I shall think myself happy if I can fill even it with true friends, right? So all these people came to him for his conversation, but he built himself a small house. And they're like, well, what is the reason, they said, that you, who are so great a man, should build such a little box as this for your dwelling house? Now, later, Aristotle, in his Nicomachean Ethics, would say at the very beginning, he would say, we all want happiness, right? Everything that we do kind of is like the ultimate end game is that we all want to be happy, right? We in every action that we're doing. And he says that there are three things that look like happiness, but really aren't. They are pleasure, there's power, and then or pleasure, power or fame, and then wealth, right? And you have all of these kind of elements woven into this story, right? The wealth. Well, why don't you or why didn't you, make it a bigger house, right? Enjoy all the good things that life has to offer, right? And Aristotle says we don't really seek money as a source of our happiness because we seek money because of the things that it can provide us, right? And we think that those things will make us happy, right? So money can't be happiness because it's not the highest good. It's not sought for its own sake. Then there's fame, right? All these people came to Socrates and they're like, you're such a great man. And Aristotle would say, well, you can't really say that fame is happiness because, again, why would you stake your claim on something that's so important on the opinions of others, which change from one day to the next, right? One day people are famous, the next day they're not, right? And then it's pleasure, right? And he's like, well, pleasure doesn't really last, right? And and happiness is the highest good. It's sought for its own sake. Not every pleasurable thing is really good for us, right? Or represents a perfection of our nature. And you have all these things woven into this little story. Socrates is not swayed by flattery, right? I would imagine, right? And he's not pursuing wealth or opulence. He built a small house, right? And he's not necessarily pursuing pleasure. He just wants to have true friends, right? And so I think, again, the story brings forth that idea of like interpersonal relationships is of a higher value than these material things that we tend, like you were saying, as a culture, tend to get fixated on, right? The status, right? Status symbols of success,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
But what about like really truly being all that it means to be human, right? To live the truly good life or the truly happy life, right? And and one can do that with modesty and dignity in their material possessions as well. I think that's kind of the point of the story, I'd imagine.
And I think, Christ would completely sort of agree with this. I mean, you
Mm.
think about Jesus Christ, you
Yeah.
you
Oh,
you
yeah.
you're a great man. The people were in awe of what he was doing and his healing and the followers that he had, and
Yeah.
it'd be like, Jesus Christ should be living in a mansion in Jerusalem, and in Bethlehem. You should have houses in Bethlehem and Nazareth and other places, and
Right.
because he's Jesus Christ,
Yes. The
and
Messiah.
the Messiah,
Right.
and uh, no, he didn't. He,
Yeah.
he didn't, and it was like, wait a second. Well, wait, shouldn't you be different? Shouldn't you be
Right.
acting different? Shouldn't you be living different? And of course,
Right.
he gets questioned, right? Like,
Yes.
why are you hanging out with tax collectors? Why are you hanging out with Pharisees, right?
Right.
You know, he had he had followers, right?
Yes.
He had thousands of people trying to follow him around and wanted to be close and wanted to be touched and healed by him, and
Yeah.
you know, and but it wasn't. Yes, he came for all of humanity, but he didn't come to be popular.
Right.
He didn't come for fame,
No.
even though he was basically becoming infamous in the area, right?
Mm.
He couldn't help that, but it wasn't why he came. He didn't
No.
come to be number one on the top charts of people in the area, you
Yeah.
know?
Right.
And he walked around with his close group, of
Right.
apostles.
Yeah.
And that was, I mean, his life was very simple.
Right.
And I think that we tend to sort of like forget that Christ was leading a very simple life, and he preached that to the people that
Mm.
he encountered, right? The the
Yeah.
the the person who said, what do I need to have salvation? And says, sell all your belongings and come and follow me, right?
Yes.
And the person walks away sad. Oh, that's not the wisdom I wanted from Jesus.
Right.
Socrates says,
Yeah.
small house and fill it up with some good people.
Yeah.
Oh, that's not really the wisdom I was looking for from you.
Right.
But our interior self, our humanness wants to reject real wisdom, right? Go back to what I
Right.
said about scripture. People are like, I don't know
Yeah.
about this Christian lifestyle thing.
Yeah.
There's something better than this, right? I mean, there's our interpretation of happiness, right? Because we go back to Aristotle and saying, yeah, we want to be happy, but we're misguided in our happiness. And
Right.
Jesus attempts to set us straight, and we sort of reject Jesus' teachings.
Yes.
Socrates is trying to sort of set an example, and like, well, why are you doing that?
Mm-hmm.
We have trouble as a society accepting that sometimes wisdom is actually much simpler in what our expectations were about that wisdom.
Yes. Right. Much simpler in scope and concept, like you were saying, but also more challenging to live out, especially for someone like the wealthy young man who's like, here's the way to true happiness. Let it go. Let go of the interior attachments, let go of the exterior attachments, and come follow me, come follow Jesus, right? Yeah, and you're talking about that. Like when you say, why did Jesus come? I was thinking, well, Jesus said he is the way, the truth, and the life, and that he came so that we could have life and have it more abundantly. And big houses don't give life, right? Or
Right.
all the toys that one could muster in this life or amass in this life, they don't give life. Jesus gives life, right? All of that is just, it's passing away. It's folly to stake our claim, our deepest desires for happiness on those kind of things, because they are that sooner or later, the house will, earthquake or gets burned or even just wears down. You look at these castles, the ruins of castles from bygone days. They were at the height of temporal success for their time, and now they're ruins, right? And a memory. But life in Jesus Christ lasts forever, right? Yeah.
And I think that the last thing to sort of take away is that the world exists. The world was created by God, but because of the fall, right? The world is a place filled with a lot of bad things, a
Mm,
lot of evil, a
right.
lot of temptation,
Right.
right? And many times, not all the time, but many times we find ourselves having a difficult time living when we surround ourselves by more and more and more of the world.
Right. Yeah.
So Socrates is like, I'm going to keep it real simple. I'm going to have a small house. I'm going to have a few friends. And in leading a simple life, and not telling everyone to go get a small house and get 5
Right.
friends, but the concept being that if you simplify your life with less things of the world,
Yes.
which is what Jesus told the wealthy young man,
Right.
let all your stuff go and come and follow me. Let's keep it simple. Follow me. All right. Look here.
Yes.
All right. Look
Right.
right here.
Exactly.
Follow me. Get rid of
Right.
your stuff. Follow me.
Yes.
You're gonna be fine.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So if we can simplify our life
Right.
and say, I have eliminated a lot of the distractions of the world. I let go of this. I stopped doing this. I started reading this. I started praying more. I really kind of just honed in on Jesus
Yes.
and let go of all the other things and simplified. Wow, I've been feeling happier. Not perfect,
Right.
not perfect. There's a quote by St. John Vianney says, you have less to suffer in following the cross than in following basically the ways of the world.
Yeah.
So simplify your life,
Yeah.
focus on Jesus,
Yes.
get a small house in the way that it pertains to your life.
Sure.
And,
Right.
and follow Jesus.
Metaphorically.
Right. Metaphorically speaking,
Right.
find your small house, find your group of friends,
Yes.
and lead a life towards Jesus.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Keep it simple. Keep focus on Jesus.
Right.
Yeah. What a beautiful takeaway, Albert. Well, as always, it's been great talking with you and sharing these ideas and thoughts. And I always go away with lots of things to think about. And I hope you have too as well. And be sure to tune in if you haven't already done so to We Are One Body Audio Theater and listen to the story Socrates and His House as written by James Baldwin. And don't forget to click like and subscribe. Smash that like button.
Smash it. Just pound it. Get after it.
Right. Make Socrates proud. Right. And we'll see you on the next table of content.